At least from my point of view, Head shoes get a little overlooked sometimes, even though they have certain tech in them that you really can't find anywhere else. And I thought since Head makes two pretty different styles of shoe, the Revolt Pro 3.5 and the Sprint Pro 3.0, it'd be fun to put them head to head. See what I did there? Hey, what's up? Zach here. And Head has come out with some cosmetic updates to their Revolt Pro line and Sprint Pro line. Now, both of these shoes operate kind of in between the spaces of some other shoes out there, so they're actually really interesting to look at. And heads up, Head did send me both of these pairs of shoes, as they are pretty hard to come by in my size right now. However, this video is not sponsored. I'm getting no money from them. I have no financial interest if you buy these or not. And of course, every opinion in this video is my own. All right, with that out of the way, uppers. On the Revolt Pro uppers, you have an ultra flexible molded upper in between the stiffness range of the Fila Axeless Energized and the Asics Cord FF2. They are on more the pillowy and comfortable side, and they aren't as supportive and constrictive as the Asics Cord FF2, but they're much more supportive and kind of harnessing than the Fila Axeless Energized. However, on the Sprint Pro, the uppers are more of a woven material, kind of like the Babolat Jet Mach 3 or the Nike Vapor Pro. It also has this ultra minimalist tongue that you're seeing in a lot of shoes these days. The one thing that surprised me a little bit about the Sprint Pros versus the Revolt Pro and other shoes in its category is it does have that elastic tongue, kind of like the old Vapor 10 knit, which sometimes isn't that great because it gets a little flimsy. However, in the Sprint Pro, the angle of it is pretty interesting because it hugs your forefoot really tightly. So you're getting a little bit more suction cupping around the top part of your foot versus a lot of other shoes in its category. And a lot like the Adidas Ubersonic 2, the Sprint Pro has these plastic supports in really strategic locales around the heel and the lateral side to keep the uppers pretty stable, even though they are ultralight uppers. The one thing I'll say about both the Revolt Pro and the Sprint Pro 3.5 is that the ankle collars just aren't as stiff as something like, say, the Lotta Mirage or the Diadora Blue Shield. So when you do get them, make sure you do the runner's knot in the ankle. It gives them a ton more security. And on the upper durability tests with the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, pretty interesting. The Revolt Pro has a pretty thin upper DuraGuard here, but it didn't get through that first layer. However, because it is punched out in these little arrows, if you do slide a lot here on the inside and you catch it in the wrong direction, you will rip through some of this. However, on the Sprint Pro, as you can see, it has a ton of durability guard right here on the medial side, unlike the Revolt Pro. It's really thick. And we'll find out why later in the video, but this is excellent durability, not even through that first layer of the 2-layer DuraGuard. So in terms of sliding durability on the upper, the Sprint Pro is actually a little better. Getting down to the midsoles and the teardown, both of these have 3 layers of EVA, which make them pretty darn plush underfoot. However, the part of the midsole I find to be the most massive feature is the ventilation system. The ventilation system is covered by this sticker out of the box that you can peel off, which exposes these vents, which draw heat away from your arch. It's a small detail that really makes for a more pleasant time on court. Just watch on clay, because if it's a finer clay, you actually might be dragging some of that up into there. The Revolt Pro, however, has a lot more reinforcement along the rails of the midsole on the outside, and especially and more importantly on the inside, which just give it a little bit more of a snappy and responsive feel when it's actually on foot versus the Sprint Pros. The one thing the Sprint Pros don't have is a lot of security and stiffness on the bottom of your foot. So unlike some shoes where you're getting really low, you can kind of pop back up, the Sprint Pros kind of fold like a lawn chair when you're getting really low. If there is someone that does play really low or is used to really getting down and digging for balls, these might not be the best shoes. They do put a little bit more strain on your foot than some others would. Versus on these shoes, when you're just running back and forth and sprinting, they're ridiculously fast and breezy. So just kind of a different player for different shoes. Because if you look at the serve test, 23 centimeters on the Sprint Pro versus 27 on the Revolt Pro. This really objectifies that subjective sensation of the Sprint Pro kind of bending under my foot when I push off versus the Revolt, which feels much more stout. Now, the outsole tread of the Revolt and Sprint Pros are made for completely different playing styles. On the Revolt Pro, you have this diverse herringbone pattern, which grips, plants, and pivots really well, as you can see here with a suicide test time of 14.78 seconds, whereas the Sprint Pros are a honeycomb pattern, which is good for more natural movement on hard courts. But as you can see, and I can't make this up, 14.80 seconds on its suicide test, just showing that even though these are wildly different shoes, they kind of both get you to the same place. The really interesting part, though, to me, is on these first few turns, you can see the Revolt Pro doesn't really give when pivoting. It just digs in and then has a good push off. Whereas on the same turn, the Sprint Pro allows for much more fluid movement and sliding. So this test to me is kind of a toss-up of which is better. It just depends on your footwork style. And on the outsole durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, both of these just over 1 millimeter of damage, let's say 1.5 millimeters of damage. So not bad bad durability, but definitely not the most stiff rubber we've seen this year. What I just think is so cool about the engineering of shoes in general is you got these two really different shoes. And as you can see here, the Sprint Pros are just made for sliding. So of course they're going to beef up the inside. That's why the durability test was so good. It also has a much wider lateral flange than the Revolt Pros because you're going to be sliding into shots more. They don't want these shoes rolling. So just these little tweaks make a shoe good for one style of play versus another for another style of play and another style of footwork. Now getting off of one foot doctor soapbox and onto another, the fit of both the Revolt and Sprint Pros is actually pretty small, so even if you just run true to size, at least me, I would go up that 1/2 size. I know me and 1/2 size up, I'm 11.5, so I went to a 12. I didn't have any break-in and they weren't uncomfortable, but I did not have any extra room either. So if you are above a 2E, expect some break-in from that if you only go up a 1/2 size, and if you go up that full size, just remember that is going to be a lot of shoes, so take that into consideration. And because both of these uppers are pretty light, neither of them are fantastic for somebody who really overpronates or has a really bad flat foot. However, both of them do accommodate an orthotic, which does help out. But I think when it comes to who are the best players for both of these shoes, I would say the Sprint Pro definitely has a narrower base of people that will like it. Definitely somebody with your own foot and leg strength. Definitely somebody that doesn't need to dig for balls, and someone that just wants a lot of speed and a really light feeling shoe. Someone that maybe runs more up and down more than side to side and kind of stays on 2 feet a lot. Versus the Revolt Pro, which does fit a much broader section of the tennis playing public. You can get some good pivoting and push off of this. It is pretty plush and light, however, it does give you a lot of force when you need it. And I would also say both of these shoes, if you're somebody that sweats a lot or really overheats their shoes, both of these are a fantastic option because of the ventilation system. I actually did play with the Revolt Pros, one side not ventilated and one side ventilated. And maybe it was just biased because I knew I was doing it, but I did feel a little bit of a difference in the foot that was ventilated, did feel a little cooler. Maybe that is just psychological, but hey, even if it's psychological, that can still be an edge. And remember, if you're somebody that's looking for a more maximalist shoe like the Diadora Blue Shield 5s, the Adidas Sole Court Boost, or the Court FF2, especially in the uppers, that real harnessing and stout feeling. Remember, the Head Revolt and Sprint Pros are just made for a different type of player. They're made more for the Adidas Ubersonic 2 and 4 crowd. So just take that into consideration when you're looking for shoes. But of course, I'd love to know your thoughts. Which one do you think is better, if either of them at all, or are you going with another brand? Let me know in the comments down below. So if you want to see the rest of the brand new shoes of 2021, make sure you click this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect, rubber, and foam. I'll see you in the next video.